שלום לכולם, ברוכים הבאים, ערב, אני מאוד שמח לכל מי שנמצא איתנו כאן הערב, ויש לי את העונג היום לארח את מריל לוין איתי. היי מריל.
Hi, Eran. Nice to
How are
see
you?
you. I'm
אז,
very well.
אז שוב ערב טוב לכולם, אנחנו התחלנו בשידור, ואני רוצה רק ככה לראות שאתם רואים ושומעים אותנו כמו שצריך, אז אני אשמח מי שנמצא לנו שיוכל לכתוב לנו בצ'אט שהוא שומע, רואה, אפילו תשלחו לנו ככה מאיפה אתם בארץ או בעולם, יש לנו גם חברים מהעולם אני מניח, אז תכתבו מאיפה אתם ונוכל ככה לברך אתכם, ובינתיים גם אני אסביר לכם קצת על השידור שלנו הערב, למי שצופה או משתתף בשידור הזה בפעם הראשונה. אנחנו מאוד נשמח לשאלות שלכם, יש לכם אפשרות לשלוח לנו שאלות בצ'אט, פשוט תשלחו את השאלה ואנחנו נגיב אליה, נענה לה במהלך השידור, ואני רואה שכבר רואים ושומעים מצוין, מעולה, אז אנחנו כבר מתחילים, אנחנו נעבור לאנגלית. So, hi, thanks again and welcome.
Thank you.
So, Merle, I will start with my own quick introduction of how I got to meet you, and then I will give you the opportunity to present yourself as well.
Okay.
So I think it was like 2 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, you were here in Israel, and you did a workshop on writing days. And I was in this workshop with Vicky, my wife, and it was quite amazing for me, quite amazing experience, because it really got me to, I was writing before, but this time it really got me to write from a completely different place. And the exercises especially were so powerful that I think one of them was actually, for me, it was also kind of like a healing process to some extent. So I want to again to thank you for this and for this opportunity, first of all.
For the courage to go to where you went to in the workshop.
Thank you. So, for people who don't know you, maybe you can present yourself and what you're doing, and we'll start, with some questions, and all the people here that want to ask you also questions, and just type on the chat, and we'll get to them.
Yes. Well, what can I tell you? I teach a method of writing that I feel helps people connect to the truth of who they are, what their life purpose is, what they're doing on earth. And I find that writing is a fantastic to begin this journey of self, just very personal, intense experience. And we'll probably go into that in more detail during the interview. But perhaps just a few words about me. I live in South Africa. I'm born there, but I also am a Canadian, and I spend a lot of my time teaching and traveling in Europe. So I sort of feel that I'm a global citizen. I'm married to, we've been together for many, many years, 49 years this year.
49 years.
And yeah, and I think the secret to our marriage and relationship is that we are continuously removing layers of the onion, exploring more deeply who we are, what we have come to do on earth, and how we can develop ourselves as conscious human beings of purpose. So we have 2 beautiful children and 2 grandchildren. We're very, very blessed to have a most wonderful family. I began my career in theatre. I was in children's theatre for many years. Then we immigrated to Canada from South Africa in the 70s and lived in a spiritual community for 6 years, and then moved to Toronto and opened a natural health institute, which we ran for about 15 years. It was enormously successful, grew exponentially. And we discovered actually that the success of what we had created was undermining our own personal process, because we were so exhausted. The more successful the business became, the more exhausted we became. And finally, we reached a junction in the road where we decided to step away from that and to follow our hearts more closely. And so my husband and I took a long tiyul in Israel, and we walked the mountains, and we talked, and we visioned together what is our heart. Really gave ourselves the opportunity to go deeply into that. And I realized that I longed to write. I didn't know what to write. I didn't know if I could write, but I knew that as a child, I loved writing, and I had loved writing through school. I did my degree in literature, and I've always been fascinated by this process of writing. And so I went off and took a run, actually, something maybe similar to what you did in Israel, Eran. And this was 20 years ago. I did this workshop, and I started writing. I had no ambition for where it would lead to. I just wanted to give myself the opportunity. And through this process, I've discovered that it's been a fantastic tool for me to connect deeply to what I call my original medicine. And maybe that's something I could talk about. Would you like me to talk about that?
Yeah.
What original medicine?
Yeah, I want to ask you about what you mean by original medicine, but just before that, just something that you said that kind of my thinking, that I think many people would love to write, to get something out of them. I think it's probably one of the best self-expression opportunities we have. But some might have this kind of inner conversation that say, well, I'm not a writer. So, who gives me the right to write? And what I find interesting about what you just shared with us is that you just went on to write without thinking about this too much, am I a writer or I'm not a writer? And maybe you just can, say something about it. I think it's a very interesting point.
I think that's such an important question you ask, because many people are terrified of writing. They're afraid of public speaking. We are filled with many fears that we developed as children because of expectation or peace, whatever. We slowly shut ourselves down. But if we were to ask, for example, a kindergarten class who can sing, everyone would shoot their hands up happily. And who can dance, everybody would jump around and say, I can dance, because children are just filled with the sense of them being able to do anything. Now, writing is just thinking. It's thinking in a different way. But the difference between writing and thinking, actually, Stephen King, the author, he says writing is refined thinking. And what that means is that normally we live with 1,000 conversations going on in our minds, a cacophony of noise, of conversation. And we often speak out of that cacophony. And I love that word, cacophony, because it has within it the word phony. Because those conversations are phony. They're unreal. They don't belong to us. They're not the truth of who we are. Many of them are the conversations of our parents, of our country, of our religion, of our culture, the imprints on us. But these many, many conversations are going on all the time in our thinking process. When we sit down to write, we can only write one thought at a time. And this, to me, is the fantastic gift of what writing does. Now, when we first sit down to write, everything wants to come down. It's like a big funnel on top of our heads. I imagine it. It's actually in our whole system. But many, many things want to come through. And because of this limitation that we just, through the pen or through our fingertips on the keyboard or whatever, can only express one thought, there's this kind of traffic jam that comes up. And I think this might be what gives people this sense of feeling blocked. Now, it's not to say that these thoughts that are coming through are the true thoughts. Many of them are phony thoughts, phony ideas. They're coming out of the cacophony. And the practice is that through writing, we begin to develop the sensitivity, the kind of litmus test of you for me. Am I really saying what I mean to be saying? That's a practice. And the method that I work with, that you experienced in the workshop, I humorously call it Merle's messy method, because that's what it is. It's like connects back to childlike mind that just accepts that we're full of potential, that there's no limitations. And most importantly, gives the sort of permission to connect to first thoughts. Because first thoughts, and in my workshops, I talk about it with the metaphor of fishing. When we go fishing, we throw and we wait. And something inevitably catches onto that hook. But we don't have any control over what's going to catch onto that hook. Could be a big fish or a little fish or a boot or a piece of seaweed. It could be nothing. And then nothing is as important, you see. I call those first thoughts. And the more we develop to listen to that first nudge of feeling. In fact, Virginia Woolf, who's a great writer, called this the process of moving from nothing to something. It's very subtle. That takes a special kind of listening, special kind of stillness. And everyone can do this. It just takes practice. It takes being in a different state of mind. And I think that through this practice, just through doing this, even for 10 or 15 minutes a day, changes one's life. It has enormous healing benefit. And most importantly, it connects one to what I call original medicine.
That's amazing. And through this process, I think maybe one of the challenges, and I will refer to your fishing example, is that, you know, we go out fish what we're going to catch. And we have this inner conversation, you know, that is concerned what we're going to catch. Is going to be fish or a lousy boot? It could be both, right? And maybe do you have some kind of method or something that helps us to keep this inner voice quiet so we can focus on the fishing regardless of what we're going to start?
Well, I do. And it's a really good question because, first of all, we have within us what we call the saboteur. That aspect of us that is, when we want to move forward, it wants to hold us back. It's an inner resistance. It's a fear, whatever. I have worked with this a lot in this writing method that I've developed. And I have these encouraging steps to go along. We almost have to take ourselves very gently into the process so that we don't our resistances. So, for example, I say, feel yourself flying. Just fly. Feel the current of air. Feel supported by it. Give yourself time to drop into what you're writing about. This isn't about having a goal to reach. There's no destination because we don't know where the writing needs to lead us to. And that's the key. So it's like let go. And what comes may not be perfect, but that's what's coming. That's what is arriving. And appreciate that as some form of creation that you've created. And I found that over the years, I've been teaching this method now for about 17 years worldwide. And people have a fantastic experience of connecting to something within themselves that they didn't know was there. And that's the key. We don't know. We don't know what's waiting to come down that funnel. Job to, and we don't know where it needs to go to. We have one job, and it's very simple, just to show up. Show up and begin the process. That's the job.
So it's like to disconnect ourselves from the result, just to do the job regardless of the result. Okay.
Exactly. We don't know what the result is. You know, I when I started writing this way, I had no ambition. It has led miraculously to publishing books and to interviews like this and to teaching all over the world and to being a successful author. But that's not where I started. I started out with that first step of learning how to throw out that fishing rod and wait and listen and sense what's coming and trust that. Just trust it and start writing and let the writing reveal itself. It's a whole other way of being. It doesn't have goals and ambition and clear, this is what I want to achieve. That's not the kind of writing I teach, because I feel that this essence of who you are wants to make itself known through your life. And give it this opportunity, give it this avenue, you'll be amazed at what will occur. It will begin to show itself. It's been waiting for the opportunity.
Yeah. So you call your workshops Write Your Way In. Okay.
Yes.
And I know that you see that writing could be a very powerful tool for self-development. So we can speak to that a bit.
Well, yes, that is essentially what I'm talking about, that it's a tool. You don't know what that tool, how it's going to work. You might pick up a carpenter's saw or something. You don't know what you're going to make with it, but you start using it. This is what writing is. Why I call my workshops Write Your Way In is because of this process of letting what is in come forth, letting the design of your life, the essence of who you are, show itself through writing. There was a social anthropologist named Eran who traveled around the world studying stories of ancient indigenous people all over the world. And I am very, very interested in the wisdom of indigenous people. I've written a book, non-fiction, Sand Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, and I'm in the process of writing another book about this. But anyway, she traveled around, sat with indigenous people, and listened to their stories. And then she gathered the stories together and discovered that certain stories were common to all these people, even though they had had no contact with each other. And she called these stories universal myths. And what are universal myths? It means that they exist, and they exist everywhere. We don't know where they come from and who they don't belong to anyone or any culture or any country. They belong to everything, everyone. And one of these universal myths is the story of original medicine. And what this is that we are each born to bring medicine to the world. It's an essence. It's like a tincture of who we are. It's something very huge of us. The way our fingerprint is unique. The way our voice is unique. The way our body language is unique. The way we walk is unique. We carry this element of uniqueness within us. And the indigenous people call this original medicine. Now, what they say is the earth, the world, needs that medicine. Medicine is an element that heals, that brings healing, that brings perseverance. In our life mission is to reveal this medicine, to bring it out. Writing, I feel, is a fantastic way to do this because you connect with yourself in such a deep and personal way. Now, how do I know what my original medicine is? People ask me. It's very simple. Think about what you're good at. Think about what nourishes the people around you. What aspect about you? That is connected to your original medicine. What you love to do, the way you enjoy expressing yourself, the elements of your life that flow, where things just seem to move easily without effort. If you find yourself pushing the river, things are not working out. It's very possible that you're not connecting to your original medicine there. For example, when my husband and I realized that this amazing business we had started had developed so well, it was a great success. It was the first holistic health center in Toronto. It was a success, yes, but we have to face the big question. Is the success increasing my passion for life, or is it connected to this force in my life? And we realized it was just a step on the path, but the cycle of that had ended, and so we just walked away from it, handed it over to our therapist, continued on this path of investigating what is it that calls. And I know for myself, I could not have done that without the tool of writing. The simple, low-tech, just a pen, you know, all you need, just a pen and a piece of paper or a piece of toilet paper or a napkin in a restaurant. You can be without lights, you can be camping, you can be whatever the weather, it doesn't matter. It's a way of just capturing these very subtle thoughts and feelings that you have and putting it down in a way that records them.
Wonderful. And
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm curious. So, how is your how we call it, like your writer's life? How does that look like? What's maybe some practices that you do? How do you go with that?
Yeah, what does a writer's life look like? A lot of people think, it has writers into this room and creates wonderful things. Magically, the words just pour through and there's no blockage. And
He connect to the higher inspiration and everything flows.
I say life is an Olympic event. Once you're committed to life, to being alive, to living, and to connecting deeply with your original medicine, it's an Olympic event. It doesn't happen by sitting on the couch and watching series and eating chips. It happens through discipline, through practice, through dedication, commitment. So the first thing I think that is very important that I had to discover for myself, but I would suggest works for everyone, is to connect to your circadian rhythm. You know, that's the rhythm that the birds follow. Now, what that means is that we have a certain period of time when our energy is at its peak. And that's the best time to engage in what you want to do, in the things that are most important to you. So, for example, some people work very well at night. Others have good energy midday or mid-morning. My rhythm is early. I love to be awake before the birds wake up. And then I enter my day with their song of celebration. To me, it's like a miracle of life. I love it. So I get up usually around 4 o'clock. And I have, even though I travel, and I'm often in hotel rooms or, you know, on long trips, whatever, overcoming jet lag or travel fatigue, I try to keep a rhythm to my day. I find that for me, writing anchors. So I get up, I have my practice. I meditate. I've been meditating for about 30 years. I sit and still myself, connect to whatever it is in my field. Then I practice Leonardo da Vinci exercise, and I'll talk a little bit about Leonardo da Vinci because he's a great source of inspiration to me. And he used to get up every day, apparently, and write 100 questions, just for the sheer joy of questions without expecting answers. And that's something we did in the workshop, right? Yeah. So I write about 10 questions.
Just to say about that, it's to people who are now just, so it's questions about whatever you want in the world. Like, you know, why is the sun shining like that or there? And why didn't I get my newspaper this morning? Whatever question that comes to your mind, right?
Yeah. What should I make for breakfast? Right to the most existential question comes up. It's connected to this process of fishing, just letting the thoughts come. So that's a practice. And then I sit down and I do the messy method. So even if I'm working on a project, I still just let that free writing come through. And I feel that really supports my practice a lot. Now, I'm a Canada at our cottage, and we have this lovely little cabin on a lake. And I set myself challenges against my resistances. So my writing life that I thought I would tell you a little about, little secret into how I work with my resistances. I hate cold water. And the Canadian lakes are not exactly like the Mediterranean in Israel. But I'd read that it's very healthy to jump in ice cold water. So I walk down to the lake naked. I dive every morning at dawn. And I know it's a battle between my immune system and my skin, between what I want to do and what I know is healthy for me. And I love this edge of resistance. It's shown me a lot about how to push through, and how when one pushes through, it opens up all kinds of other possibilities. I just feel happier. So I see that as part of my writing life now, to challenge myself, to meet resistances, and to sometimes we have to be very gentle with ourselves, take ourselves almost by the hand, and, you know, like a child, ease ourselves through the resistances, console ourselves that we'll manage. We won't die. That's it. I think I write, I can write sometimes for 10 hours a day. I just love writing. I feel I connect to an aspect of myself that makes me very happy. But of course, that's not always possible because I travel a lot and I have a family and I have a husband who has a very full life and there's social interactions. So it's not always possible, but I try to carve out time for myself. And silence and solitude, very important for me as a writer.
So we'll talk about silence in a second, because I know one of the things that you also do is a silent retreat. So we'll talk about that in a second. But another question that I'm curious about is, in the writing process, do you feel that there's any difference for you in terms of writing, like with a pen and a paper or on the computer? Do you feel a different experience?
Completely different.
Okay.
I love to type. I feel my mind, I'll tell you how I write. I have many different colored pens in a big thing. I have big sheets of blank paper, and I love to scribble first. Scribble ideas and thoughts. It seems to wake up my creativity. They write. Sit down at the computer and type. Then I print up what I've written and I read it to myself. And I scribble all over. I've been writing a book for umpteen years. I'm working on the final version of it now. And I still print up and scribble all over the page. I think I'm never going to stop doing that. But eventually, I guess, I will reach a point where I will stop making changes. But anyway, it's a very fun, creative process. And I love working with different colored pens. And, you know, there's some childhood mind that's incredibly free and creative. And unless something is fun, you're not drawn to be doing it all the time. So I have some days when I wake up with where I feel just completely blocked. And I'll talk about that in a little while, how I overcome that, because there are ways to do that.
Okay. And what about inspiration? You know, people will often think that, you know, good writer always has inspiration. And where do you know inspiration from?
Inspiration comes from really the simplest things. Sometimes we feel that we need to, you know, go on a tour, on a cruise to the Arctic to be inspired. But in truth, inspiration comes from noticing and observing small things. with a sense of humor. I often think that God has a great sense of humor. I've seen it happening in my own life many times when I take myself so seriously and then, you know, just fall flat on my face because of that. How to put this? Today we live in a very amazing time when we have so much opportunity to be inspired and to develop ourselves. I often think about my grandmother. That's just 2 generations ago. She never had the opportunity to go to workshops or to even talk to anybody about her fears and her problems and her feelings. You know, it was just basic live and do and survive. But today, anything we're interested in, we have access to. Now, how to fire up the inspiration actually to drive us to want to keep opening up to new ideas and new possibilities. I am very drawn to Leonardo da Vinci. He was one of the greatest thinkers. He really saw life through the perspective of 360 degrees. He painted, he sculpted, he invented, but he was a fantastic writer. He wrote everything down. We have available on the internet at least 80,000 pages that he wrote. And they say those are what were left over after most of his manuscripts were used, you know, to wrap fish in and to be used as packaging paper in boxes and things. But anyway, he wrote everything down. He wrote down his thoughts, his musings, his philosophical ideas, his recipes, jokes he heard, his fears, he sketched. He carried that everywhere, and he filled many, many codici. That's what it's called in Italian. And so I keep a notebook with me, and I write things down as they come up. He used to say that thoughts and ideas are like butterflies. They just land and then they take off again. So it's important to capture them. Mm. He also sat down and wrote these 100 questions every day, just to spark his curiosity. He was the most curious person. He said most people look without seeing. So as a writer, to really look and engage with the world around me, what's happening? I'm fascinated by local people, by the little things happening on the sides. Most people go straight to the main thing that's happening. I watch the actors on a stage that are not speaking and the small things happen. There are often many details. The people's body language, interaction. I watch people in restaurants, how they're interacting. Are they listening to each other? Most of the time, they're not. It's fascinating. A whole world opens up when we see the opportunity for inspiration in anything. If I'm kept waiting in a doctor's room for half an hour, I could feel annoyed, or I could just see this as an opportunity to be inspired. Check out what's happening, the energy, the atmosphere, the people, what's happening. A big research was done on the effect of literature, fine literature, on human consciousness, on reading fine literature. By fine literature, I mean not novels or even non-fiction, a big study was done by the Journal of Science, was reported in the New York Times a couple of years ago. And I was fascinated by this. Why? They said the outcome of this research was that if a person reads fine literature, that means literature written by an author, mostly in their own language, in their mother tongue, but an author of standing, of really gone deep into the subject of fiction, not non-fiction, made a story, that by reading 15 minutes of this kind of literature, it completely changed their ability, their empathy, their social interaction, their understanding of the world around them, their self-confidence. And they did this study on thousands of people that they recruited through Amazon. They gave them novels to read, they gave them non-fiction, and then fiction. And after they read each kind of literature, they tested them on certain questions. The study showed that the enormous influence of the way a sentence has been structured affects the brain of the reader, how we are. And I decided to try and experiment with myself because I'm in the midst of writing this book. I wanted to measure if I could improve my writing. And so I went to the greatest writer in my language, the acknowledged greatest writer, William, and reading his sonnets because I thought those are the most concise and where he really had to bring his thoughts together in the most concise way. So I spend every day about half an hour reading through the sonnet, listening to them being spoken, and then I write afterwards, and I find it really does affect my writing. So that's a source of great inspiration.
Amazing.
Reading fine literature. I would suggest everyone do that. The interesting thing about the study, just to further this, is that covered was that even if you didn't enjoy reading it, if it was too complicated, or it still had the effect.
Oh,
I think it's the way language. Well, of course, if you don't understand, but what is understanding? You see, because if you're reading something in your own language that's been very, very carefully written, and it's a story, so it's not about a subject that you don't understand. It's a story. We're driven by stories. We love stories. Now, these great writers are able to take a story, create characters that challenge one. But not only that, just the way they put their words together affects the brain. So even if you don't understand it, it's still having that effect by reading it. And understanding what I've learned with Shakespeare, because I really didn't understand what he was trying to say in his sonnets. I hated to admit it. I felt so stupid. I thought, there must be something here, but I don't understand what he's saying. And then the more I worked with that fear of feeling stupid, of resistance, the more I just opened myself up, I discovered a whole world. His message to humanity is so profound. So simple, actually. Wake up. That's what he's saying. Wake up. And that's really what I've dedicated my whole life to to say, wake up to the truth of you and your magnificent original medicine that the world needs from you.
And how does silence helps you for that? You know, you've been doing many silent retreats and hosting silent retreats. So how that fits in with writing?
I work with my Norwegian colleague, Christine Flood, and for the past 15 years, we've been teaching writing workshops together, and we have been facilitating 2 silent retreats a year at this beautiful monastery in Italy at the foothills of the Alps. We don't know what silence does. We don't know how it works. But what we see is that people arrive, stressed, anxious, often in a crisis point in their lives. They go into silence. They begin to connect to themselves. We help them. We have daily teachings, and we have meditation, and we do writing, and we do movement. We try to help them have the courage to go deeper and deeper into the silence within. And it's life-changing. People have really a fantastic experience. In my own experience, when Jeff and I decided that we were going to close our institute or hand it over, walk away from it, and start a new life, I came up with this cottage where I am now, and I spent 3 months through the winter alone, with no radio, no television, just silence. And I discovered a lot about myself. I really did. It was challenging. I don't think it's that necessary today. I don't even know if I could, because I've seen people go through 1 week of silence and reach the place of self-understanding that took me in those days 3 months to do. But I feel children need some quiet, alone time. Their lives are so structured. I see it even with my grandchildren. There's such a desire to enrich children's lives by letting them do stuff. But actually, to be alone and quiet, even to face loneliness. You know, I have a spiritual teacher who gave a talk once. He said, "Thank God for loneliness." And we run from loneliness, but it's a very crucial part of ourselves because we meet ourselves in loneliness. It's an important emotion to face. So, yeah, I think silence, it's essential. If one wants to connect to one's original medicine, it doesn't really happen in noise and busyness as effectively as it does in solitude and silence. And I wanted to, from Kafka, I love it. He says, "You do not need to leave your room. Remain sitting at your table and listen. Do not even listen. Simply wait, be quiet, still, and solitary. The world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet."
Amazing. So, Mel, if someone wants, to learn more about what you're offering and the things that you do in your workshop and silent retreats, I will show people a link to your website. They should be able to see it now if anyone wants to get more information about it. But maybe you can also, speak about, what are the things that people can get more information about you and what you do.
Yes. Thank you for that. I teach many workshops in collaboration with my colleague, my Norwegian colleague, Christine Flood, who's a best-selling author. Sometimes I teach alone, as I did in Israel, a workshop you attended. But this is the range of workshops that we have designed. We have a weekend workshop that we call Write Your Way In. And we have another weekend workshop that we call Write Your Way Into Your Inner Genius, based on the work of Leonardo da Vinci and William Shakespeare. We do a 1-week silent retreat in Italy twice a year.
When is the next one?
The next one in Italy is in November 11th to 18th. And then there'll be another in the spring. I think it's in March or April next year. But we do them twice a year, in the spring and in the autumn. We have a retreat in Sicily for people who are working on a writing project. Any kind. It can be thesis, it can be a work project, it can be a book, any kind of writing project. We have this wonderful facility up in the mountains in Sicily where D.H. Lawrence wrote Lady Chatterley's Lover. And it's right facing Mount Etna. So there's enormous power from the volcano. And we do that twice a year as well. And the next Sicily workshop we're doing is in May next year, May 5th to 12th. So that's something that many, many people come and attend, and they have a holding space. And it's wonderful to be in a group of people working deeply on a project. And then we have what we call Write and Travel, where we go to different places and use the cultural heritage and natural beauty and nature and history of a place to nourish the writer. So, for example, we have a workshop in Venice every year where we follow the footsteps of the great writers who were inspired by Venice. And our next one there will be in the spring of next year. We also have a writing workshop based on Leonardo da Vinci, where we go very deeply into his writings and his teachings. We go to the Pyrenees in France, where we consider the mysteries of the region, and we use that to nourish the writer. We have a workshop once a year in the Cape, South Africa, close to where I live, at the time when the whales are giving birth to their calves and the wildflowers. So that's usually in the fall. We have a pilgrim's walk in Norway, where we walk along an ancient pilgrim path between just outside of Oslo and Trondheim, a very ancient path, and we write and walk and follow the kind of what comes up as a pilgrim. We have two very lovely workshops coming up. One is at a thermal spa in Italy, where we focus on body, mind, and soul. And so we begin the day with meditation, then we swim in the thermal pools, and we have spa treatments and writing and combination. And that we have one scheduled for this coming November 25th to December 2nd. And then in the end of February next year, we have our first writing safari in Kenya. We've been designing this for about 2 years. And it'll be an opportunity to connect to these great beasts, these animals, and also to see how it frees up something of the connection to this wild animal side of oneself. So that is February 25th next year for a week. We've negotiated a very good price at a wonderful, actually Norwegian-based place in Kenya. It's a conservancy in the Masai Mara. So that's the range of workshops. As you can see, we come at writing from every way possible.
Amazing. So I want to thank you for your time and for having this. It's been a real pleasure for me, and I'm sure for everyone who was listening here and who will listen to the replay. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Eran. It was wonderful to meet you and your wife in the workshop, and I really appreciate this opportunity to be interviewed by you.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you all who attended this live now, and be in touch. See you.